In the year 2011, Apple announced the best of the father iPhones, the iPhone 4S. The day after, Steve Jobs did pass away. Although it might have been a sad feeling for the iPhone 4S's release, it was probably one of the best iPhones ever made. It left a modern legacy of what Apple has done in the past 30 years, and what Apple would do in the next 10 years with their current iPhones. But how has it held up almost 10 years later? Hey guys, I'm Ethan from Alumni Tech 47, and today we are going to be looking at the iPhone 4S and seeing whether it was one of the best iPhones ever made and how it was made to be one of the worst. Now that is how I mostly see the iPhone 4S. I see it as a device that resembles Steve Jobs and what he has done with Apple from day one. But that doesn't focus too much on the iPhone 4S. But I think it's still essential to put that in there so that you can get a mindset as you watch through the video, I guess. So I never used the iPhone 4S. My mother used the iPhone 4 at the same time that the iPhone 4S was coming out. I also have this iPhone 4S here that is running iOS 6, but I never used this phone as a daily driver or anything. Josh from 91 Tech lived with it twice on his channel and seemed to still function in life after the fact. But I love using the iPhone 4S for music since it has a headphone jack. The iPhone 4S still looks very nice and sleek even today. Although if you saw someone using this phone as their daily driver, you would probably give them a look and wonder how they are managing to use the thing despite having a decent screen and headphone jack. But hey, at least you can still use the AirPods with the iPhone 4S. The iPhone 4S can go up to iOS 9, which Apple should never have released it for the iPhone 4S, but they did anyway, and that does almost nothing for us. But for a time they signed iOS 6 so that people who did have the iPhone 4S could downgrade to that, but they have recently no longer signed it because why? But there really is one reason why, and that is for nostalgia. But iOS 6 is so old there are almost no apps that support it anymore, and we should understand what the software does for us on the iPhone 4S. Now I've downgraded this iPhone 4S to iOS 6. I did that for speed and nostalgia, but I'm glad I did it when I did. But I never planned to use this particular iPhone 4S for a week or something like that. If I would probably buy another iPhone 4S on eBay that does run iOS 9. But assuming that you are running iOS 9, you can run apps on their latest compatible version of iOS, assuming that you have downloaded it before. You could go to iTunes, sign into your iCloud account, then download the app for the computer and then stop downloading the app. You would do that so that you would have a blockage like an old version of iOS that would stop you from downloading it. But after you download the app on the computer, that app will then have the little cloud icon with an arrow pointing down. Now you could get an older version of the app. But recently, Apple has stopped the App Store service on iTunes altogether, which is no longer possible, but you can always sign into your newer phone and download apps on there instead. Now that's out of the way, but running those apps might be kind of a pain. On iOS 6, if I were to download YouTube, which I can't anymore, the app will tell me to either update or quit the app. So I have to use the mobile website YouTube, which works fine. And that is what you would have to do anyway with most apps. Safari works excellent with most websites on iOS 6. Now using the interface of iOS 6 is a little outdated. You have to be okay with no control center and no swiping back from the screen's left side. You also have to cross out apps by holding them down until they wiggle and then crossing them out. But hey, at least I still have Siri. Now Apple has been very fond of good design since Johnny Ive has been at Apple, and the iPhone 4S proves his design very well. The iPhone 4S has a stainless steel band going around the phone like the current iPhones, but the breaks in the bands are different because they fixed antenna gate from the previous iPhone 4. It also has a glass front and back also like the current iPhones. But the iPhone 4S has the 30-pin dock connector though, but it's the last iPhone to ever be made with such a connector. But it was still kind of great because you can still use the phone with all your accessories that you have collected over the years, assuming you like Apple. You also have the home button and all the other same buttons. No complaints there, and people expected that. And that seems about it. The iPhone 4 and 4S went for simple design to perceive it as easy to use, and it was a straightforward phone to use at the time. There wasn't anything that would stop the user from getting the iPhone's full experience inside and out. The display of the iPhone 4S is the same 3.5-inch display with a 330 pixel per inch retina density, and that was very nice to have back then. Most phones at the time, as well as most phones people were using, had a crap display that didn't have much color, nor did it have a good resolution. Apple was the best in the game with displays at the time, and they were proud of it. The iPhone 4S also kept the same size as the iPhones before it. It was small and fit in your hand and in your pocket easily. Since we are kind of used to our big phones now, going back to this is kind of funny and cute. It makes your world a little smaller and makes it fun to use in a sense. But the screen couldn't display as much stuff as the bigger ones can now. But I think that is a little okay since it kind of monitors the usage of the phone. One thing that was also small was the battery. Although it wasn't small at the time, it's a 1432 mAh battery that will get you through the day running iOS 5 and 6. But if you are running iOS 8 or 9, the battery falls short. But at least the iPhone 4S has excellent standby time, which is suitable for music. Now the storage had a good range for 2011. You can go from 8GB all the way up to 64GB. The current iPhone 11 Pro starts at 64GB, which tells you how careful Apple is with its storage. But Apple makes sure that they optimize the storage they provide. You can add a decent amount of apps and media to the phone without the storage freaking out too much. But something that is freaking awesome, at least for the time, was the camera. By 2011, people were using their phones a lot more for photos and videos. So Apple listened and upgraded both camera systems on the iPhone 4S. The rear camera is now an 8-megapixel sensor with a wider aperture. The front-facing camera was upgraded from a VGA to a 1.2-megapixel sensor. Although the front-facing sensor is still mainly used for FaceTime, the rear camera was a great camera that takes great photos. Now if it gets dark, the iPhone 4S tends to struggle to keep up with quality, but it's mostly great. You can now video record up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. It looks pretty decent as Apple has always been in the video camera industry for a while. Now something that has not held up well in the iPhone 4S is the A5 chipset and the half gig of RAM. It's well optimized for iOS 5 and iOS 6, but after iOS 7 the processor and RAM can't take the load. It can barely do any hard tasks and gets hot just at the home screen. Apple has optimized iOS 9 for every iPhone at the time except for the iPhone 4S. People wanted the latest version of iOS, but they never asked for slow performance. But at the time, Apple wasn't really wanting to put something that would perform well in the iPhone 4S anyway. Apple wanted them to upgrade to a newer phone so that they wouldn't be stuck on an old phone. But Apple has recently changed their perspective and now wants people to kind of keep their older iPhone and get a new one as they quietly kill it off. But they didn't do that with the iPhone 4S. With the processor not keeping up, the battery also suffers. Your battery will also go way down in performance as you are running vigorous tasks on your phone, and iOS 9 was one strenuous task for the iPhone 4S. A lot of the iPhone 4S is running iOS 9 that hasn't had a battery change is usually shot, but mine has always run iOS 6 even when I got it, so my battery seems to be working fine and holds a charge well. Now comparing the iPhone 4S to something like the iPhone 5, it's not much similar. The iPhone 5 went up to iOS 10, but the iPhone 5 ran iOS 10 a bit better than the iPhone 4S did on iOS 9. And as the iPhones go up the line, the last compatible version of iOS running on that device is faster performing up to the current iPhones. Now that is obviously not for the processor and RAM, but Apple has had a better time with optimization. The current iPhone 11 still has only 3GB of RAM for a reason, and that is because iOS 13 isn't hungry for processing power. It runs just fine and doesn't need a lot of RAM to run, so that is left for the applications. But the iPhone 4S isn't all that bad. It has been a great iPhone for users and has held up a great life. It was a great phone that kicked off the new decade and is a symbol of what Apple has done through the years. They made the iPhone 4S so well that we have reused the design in a way in our current iPhones. When you hold the iPhone 4S, you still think that it is a great phone to use. You get tempted to use it for a few days. You want to play old games on it and listen to great music with it. The iPhone 4S is the best phone of the Steve Jobs days, and you definitely see that. It tells you that Apple has not entirely given up on Steve Jobs. I know that seems confusing, but as a tech geek, that is what the iPhone 4S represents to me. It's too bad the iPhone 4S went to waste, but the days of the iPhone 4S will never die. If you like what you heard or saw, hit that like button for this video. Also, consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so that you don't miss a single video. Comment down on what you think of the iPhone 4S or if you've ever used one. Go follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AlumniTech47 so you can see behind the scenes as well as other life updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.